Hi there, and welcome along to Africa's biggest football bra. You're listening to the On the Whistle podcast. I'm your host, Zayn Nabbi, and boy, oh boy, are we pumped up because the World Cup has delivered so many surprises. Joining me are two of African football's finest minds, Courtney, Freese, and Alasdair Howorth, and we're going to be chopping it all up on this podcast as we review and look ahead during the group stages of how the African teams have performed. There have been such exciting games. My blood's been pumping. My pulse has been pumping at an even higher rate. How are your pulse rates doing, Courtney and Alasdair?
Feeling happy. I'm feeling very vindicated as well as someone who's been preaching the way of Morocco for the last kind of year or so, backing them when probably I shouldn't have as well. But they're coming good for me today with a brilliant win over Belgium, and completely deserved it as well. This was not an upset. Let me tell you, this was not a kind of big shock. This was one team playing better than the other.
Well, you had to go there, and that's where we are naturally going to start. The football world has been stunned. The mighty Moroccans, with Ziyech, with Hakimi, with an amazing coach in Walid Regragui, have downed the mighty Belgians 2-0 in Qatar. That puts them at the top of their group with 4 points. Did anybody see this coming?
Well, Zayn, I'd like to jump in there. No, there's the simple answer. Belgium are not an easy team, second best team in the world according to FIFA rankings. But what we did see coming is a very spirited performance from Morocco. If you look at how they set up in their previous games, really good structure to the team, high intensity as well, and then also a combination of some fantastic footballers with ability. I, as you know, prior to the tournament, Morocco were my best African team I tipped to do exceptionally well. And that's also what Alasdair's been telling us about Moroccan football and the progress when he was at the Female World Cup and what he had seen in terms of facilities and academies. So didn't see it coming, but an unbelievable performance by Morocco.
For me, this is the way I describe this Morocco team is I say that this is Morocco are playing the exact type of football that England want to play. You know, we've all been very frustrated at the three lions for playing controlled football, not, letting the players off the leash. And that's exactly what Morocco did today. You know, they have these two of the best wing backs in the tournament, arguably in the world, in Hakimi and Mazraoui, but they don't deploy them as attacking wing backs. Regragui keeps them back. They keep their shape. And I think that's what I love about this Moroccan team is, they're one of the most talented teams at the World Cup in terms of the flair. The players have so much technical ability, but actually we're not playing club football here. This is an international tournament, and you don't win it by playing attacking, exciting football. You play it by playing pragmatic football. Regragui's come in after a terrific time at Wydad Casablanca, where he won the double, beating our boy Pitso Mosimane in the final of the CAF Champions League, as well as winning the Batola Pro. And I think as well as they got to the semi-finals of the Throne Cup, but he was denied the treble. But he's shown that once again he can set up a team defensively, and that's the most important thing at a World Cup. And he's managed 5 games now since coming in I think September to take over this team, and they've got 5 clean sheets. That is sensational. Like, it's unbelievable. And 2 of the teams they played in that time, Belgium and Croatia, in a huge World Cup ties, and they completely shut them down. And what I really like as well is they've not just shut down by playing super defensively or anything. They've shut the game down by controlling it. Against Croatia, we saw, Croatia have Luka Modric and Mateo Kovacic and, Brozovic, arguably the best midfield at this tournament. It's 3 sensational players. Belgium in their midfield, yeah, they've got Onana, who's a lot more functional, but they have Kevin De Bruyne, who's, again, arguably the best midfielder in the world. Both games, neither Modric or De Bruyne had a sniff of the ball, because you saw that really functional midfield 3, Onahi, Amala, and Amrabat just shutting them down time and time again. And, the difference between the Croatia game and this game is they just had that little bit of quality, and they also had that little bit of luck with Courtois kind of messing up from that first free kick. And that's how you win a World Cup. That's how you go far in these tournaments, is you organize defensively, you give your attacking players a decent platform, and you ride that little bit of luck that you're given, and you take those chances. And that's what Morocco did today, and it's thoroughly deserved victory. They were the better team by a mile than Belgium.
The Moroccan Federation, do you believe their decision now to fire the coach before the tournament and bring Walid in was the right one? Bit of a redundant question to ask, but I'll ask it anyway.
Well, listen, the result today says yes. Previous results prior to the tournament say yes. But I just think just look at who has come back into the national team as a result of the new management. Ziyech is back. Now, I just think since he's been back, forget what he does going forward, forget what he does from set pieces, but his work rate back. I was watching him, his work rate in that team. How many times did Morocco lose the ball and the work rate of high top quality players to get it back very quickly? This is what the manager's brought to the team. He's got a high class player working at that level. The manager deserves all the credit, especially in such a short period coming in.
All right, go on, Alasdair.
Well, and I think one thing Regragui has done really well is one thing that has been highlighted at this tournament is I think Morocco are the team with the most amount of players not born in their country representing them. And you have a Moroccan team that's full of these kind of different camps of players. You know, a lot of them grew up in France. A lot of them, like Ziyech, grew up in the Netherlands. You know, like I watched his post-match interview, and it wasn't with Moroccan TV, and it wasn't in Arabic because he doesn't speak it. He was in English, and it had to be translated. And then you have this huge group of them coming from Morocco. So you have this, you know, these different groups within the team, and clearly Vahid Halilhodžić couldn't manage that, and that's why, you know, a lot of the guys from the Dutch side of things, like Ziyech, like Mazraoui, got kicked out. Like, you know, not Harry, but you know, he was also kicked out. But I think that's where we see that is it's not just about the tactics. It's not just about the football. It's also about the way in which he brings together this team. And like Courtney says, you know, anyone who's been watching Chelsea, you know, knows what a gifted player Ziyech is, but knows that, you know, what a maverick he is as well. And that he doesn't always track back. He doesn't always work. And, you know, when you've got Hakimi on that wing as well, there's a sense that this actually could be a bit of a danger in terms of the work rate. But no, they worked so hard. And, you know, you saw even Hakimi coming off just to be rested for the next game because he picked up that injury. And he seemed fine with it, you know, because they believe in what Regragui is doing. And that is the biggest thing. The players really buy into it.
Well, it's a group now. You'd fancy Morocco to go through one more game against Canada, and we could see World Cup finalist Croatia or the world number 2 team Belgium go out. What an exciting start to the World Cup. So my prediction for the World Cup on the African team to shine was Senegal. They, of course, losing their opener to the Netherlands, but bouncing back and showing their potential against Qatar, winning, and still in contention to get out the group. Obviously, a colossal game against Ecuador, who they'll play in their final game. Let's get your guys' assessment and takeaways on Senegal and their start to the tournament.
Zayn, I hate being this type of person that I'm going to be in what I'm going to say now, because it sometimes is almost the easy stance to take. But I'm so frustrated with Senegal, right? I'm so frustrated. And Mendy has carried his disastrous form from Chelsea into this World Cup. There's another frustrating point for me. A goalkeeper with so many good attributes just looks so out of sorts. And I think that is just filtering through to the Senegalese, the entire team. They almost look a shadow of themselves. I don't know what is wrong. Don't tell me about them beating Qatar. They're supposed to beat Qatar, right? They're supposed to go and run over Qatar. They should be top of this group and flying. They're not. They look so vulnerable. I expect them to get knocked out. I expect them to be on a plane home, not get out the group, because Mendy at the moment, he just can't even catch a flu. I'm really disappointed in their performance.
Well, Courtney's been such a force of positivity there, Alasdair. Let's see how you'll pick this up.
I think I have a little more faith in Senegal. I agree with Courtney, particularly that first game. Mendy had an absolute stinker, and in many ways cost the team. And he, like you said, you know, he was such a force at the AFCON. He was such a force, you know, in previous games, you know, in World Cup qualifying and things. And we've seen that he's carried his club form into it. And what I would say is against Qatar, he showed a lot more. He made 1 or 2 excellent saves, and you saw that confidence went through the team. But like Courtney, you know, I it's hard now for Senegal because the pressure is on them to beat Ecuador. And the one thing Senegal have shown that they aren't great at is breaking down defensive blocks. They're not creative without Mane, and that's the one area they lack. They're a defensively solid team, really, really good functional midfield with Mendy and Gay, but they really lack that creative spark. And Ecuador are going to be happy to sit down and set up that low block, break on the counter. But and Ecuador are a really good team as well. We saw that with their draw against the Netherlands and their win against Qatar. I mean, the one hope I have for Senegal is that Ener Valencia doesn't look very fit. And not to disparage him, but fingers crossed from a Senegalese perspective that he'll be injured for Ecuador, because he's got all of their goals. In fact, I think he scored all of their World Cup goals in the last 2 World Cups they've been at. So I think there's something to give Senegal a bit of hope. But for me, the key is starting their creative players, because that's one thing they haven't done. And we saw the star boy, in my opinion, of this team is Iliman Ndiaye, who came off the bench, beat 3 or 4 players before grabbing the assist for, I think it was Bamba Dieng's goal, that final goal. And so that for me, that's what I want to see. I want to see a bit more boldness from Cisse, because so far these games he's been playing 2 very defensive midfielders, and then either a second forward in Jeju or another midfielder like Kiate. So I would love to see him play more creative players. But I, like Courtney, I came in with a lot of hope for Senegal, and I haven't been sold on them so far.
All right, well, we've got Courtney's biggest disappointment of the tournament. Alasdair, let me ask you, who has your biggest disappointment of the tournament been?
I'm hoping Mr. Inquain France is not listening, because for me, Cameroon are the ones who disappointed. I think, look, for me, coming into this tournament, Ghana is the youngest team at this tournament. They're a work in progress. I didn't expect anything from them. And actually, I was surprised at how well they did against Portugal. Tunisia, not a vintage Tunisian team, and they've impressed me, particularly that game against Denmark, and, in spells against Canada. Not Canada, sorry, in their last game against Australia. But for me, the big disappointment is Cameroon against Switzerland. And part of the reason was because they had such a good start to that game. They looked so much better than the Switzerland team. A Swiss team that lost to Ghana, remember in the World Cup warm-up, they lost 2-0. And that wasn't, obviously it's a friendly, so it's not a big game, but it wasn't a rotated side. It was a strong Switzerland side. And for me, Cameroon just looks like a team that isn't coached. I think that's the reality for me. They look like they're a team that doesn't have ideas, that they have some really good individuals, an excellent front three, Mbeumo, Choupo-Moting, and Toko Kambi. Vincent Aboubakar can't even get into the team. That's how good an attack they have. But they look like they're a team that aren't organized. And for me, what showed that was they played really well against Switzerland. They had all the energy. They were the better team. But when they conceded that goal, they lost their heads. They just started throwing the ball forward. They started attacking, without any kind of cohesion. And for me, that's the sign of a team that isn't organized, that when you've hit adversity, you don't have anything to fall back on. You don't have coaching. You don't have that rigorous formation. And part of that is because Rigobert Song hasn't, he hasn't coached at a very high level before. And B, he's only coached this team for a few months, and they've made some big tough decisions. Like we were talking in our preview podcast, players like Michael Ngajui not making the team, and we saw Nkulu struggle against Switzerland. To be frank, that was Mbola was his man, and of course, narrative wise, who's going to score? It's always going to be Bril Mbolo. Like Francis said, there's a lot of Cameroonians who are, holding a bit of a grudge against Mbolo, who is Cameroonian, but is playing for Switzerland. And lo and behold, the colonizer scores against Cameroon. And, it's frustrating, but I think for me, that's why I'm very disappointed with Cameroon so far. I was hoping that they would bring a lot more to the party.
Samuel Eto'o predicted we'd see a Cameroon and Morocco final.
I think they've been lazy, Zayn. They've been lazy. They've been lazy. They've been poor. Let's tell the truth. Let's take the cat out the bag. They've been bloody lazy. They should have never given Rigobert Song that job. He's done nothing to deserve that job. Nothing. That is a big job. That's one of the biggest football jobs in Africa. He was a star of that team. An absolute shining light, but not to lead the team. No, absolutely. So their poor recruitment has resulted in where they are. How is that team that is so powerful, that has so much talent, losing to Switzerland? It's just, I struggled to understand that. When I saw that result, Zayn, because unfortunately, the result was during working time for myself, and I wasn't able to watch the entire game. I actually sat down and I was sad because I expected Cameroon to steamroll Switzerland and really put a marker down, put a marker down for the World Cup that, you know what, we're quarterfinalists. Yeah, we are. Bare minimum. They're going home, Zayn. Cameroon are going home. They might as well be at the airport now with their bags, waiting to be picked up, because they are going to lose 3 or 4-0 against Brazil, because they're going to lose their heads. Someone's going to get sent off because they're just not going to be disciplined enough. So, a terrible decision to give that man the job.
I think I would agree with Courtney. I think the decision did baffle me. And I think, we see where the African team, it's a brilliant stat that, this is the first tournament that all of the African teams coming are coached by Africans. And I think that's something that we should highlight and something that's actually really important. But I think let's look at who internationally have been the best managers who are African of their countries. One, Jamal Belmadi with Algeria, put together one of the best AFCON sides we've seen in recent times, the Algeria team in 2019. And two, I would say that the second one is Walid Regragui, who's coming through, right? Aliou Cisse has done terrifically at Senegal, but let's be honest, he's done as expected at Senegal. With this golden generation, they needed to win an AFCON, and he's done that, and he's done well. But what I would say, what strikes me about Regragui and about Belmadi is they weren't just given the job straight off the bat, right? Both of them had to prove their stripes at club level. For Belmadi, he coached in Qatar and Al Duhail, and as well as he did a lot of work with the national team in Qatar. And similarly, Regragui managed, FUS Rabat, he managed Al Duhail in Qatar, and then he took on the Wydad job. And to be honest, I don't think most Moroccans a year ago would have expected him to be the Morocco manager. I think most of them said he's a future manager, but he needs to manage Wydad for another 2 or 3 years. Then he'll get the Morocco job. The federation decided that they didn't like Vahid, they wanted to pull the trigger, and so he got there early. But I think I agree with Courtney, that the decision to bring in Rigobert Song really confuses me. And look, we have to judge him on what he's done so far. And what he's done is he's gotten through a tie to get to the World Cup against Algeria, probably the most difficult country to get past in terms of World Cup qualifying. They hadn't lost in 40 years at I think it was the Stade Oran in Algeria, and even though they had a terrible AFCON, they still have one of the best teams and one of the best managers in Africa. But so he did that, but then since then, they lost to Uzbekistan in World Cup warm-ups, and then we've seen this against Switzerland. And again, for me, it feels like a team is not coached. Samuel Eto'o has gotten a lot of plaudits since coming into the Cameroon team for professionalizing a lot of things, increasing the pay of the local players, improving the local league, as well as the women's side of the game. He's gotten a lot of plaudits. And we want to see that actually he is doing the right thing, making the right decisions, because there is a lot of pressure on him, because Rigobert Song is, obviously a good friend of his. And we don't want this to be a case of a FA president giving jobs to friends. But, for me, Rigobert Song has to prove himself, and he's going to have to prove himself quickly because, on one hand for him, he got lucky in terms of he got given the job right before World Cup. But on the other hand, that means there's so much more pressure. And if he gets this wrong, it's hard to justify giving him the time to go into the next AFCON because he hasn't been able to show that quick turnaround that Seydou Regragui has.
Alasdair, I think you articulated that so well. I just think the way you've put that in a bottle, we could sell it because it's well put. But what I will say is, let's now see, because here is Cameroon's first. No, let me not use that. Here is Cameroon's one of many difficult decisions to be made, because I'm saying to you now, they are going to go home soon. They are not going to be coming out their group. So you can chisel that in stone somewhere. They are going home. Number one, he has to fire him. He has to fire him. There is no way this manager can have that generation of player and the team performs so bad. You must remember, strong AFCON. The youth, absolutely everything is in the advantage of Cameroon. How do they perform so badly? And if you look at the Switzerland midfield, my goodness, the slowness, the age of the midfield, Xhaka's in there. How does Cameroon not blow this team away? I don't know. That's why I say, now, with all the good things that Samuel Eto'o has put together, and I'm saying really good things, one of the things that I also enjoyed seeing the other day is Samuel Eto'o, the team was training, and he was training in the background as well, had his boots on. The man has really taken to that job, but also made himself one of the players. He's one of them. He's not the president sitting in the ivory tower looking down on his players. No, he is a player that is now the president. But now he doesn't have a manager. He does not have a manager.
All right. The Teranga Lions bounce back. The Domitable Lions are down and almost out. RIP. What do you gentlemen say about Tunisia and their chances at this tournament?
Tunisia, they blew it with this game against Australia. They were so good against Denmark, so good. Like, they pressed them. I think one of the patterns of this tournament that we've seen is that the teams that have caused the upsets have not been the teams that have parked the bus, right? It's been the teams that have taken the game to the bigger teams. Japan, Saudi Arabia with that ridiculous high line and their pressing. And Tunisia was similar. They pressed, they were aggressive, they were solid. And, really, I wasn't expecting that much, to be honest. I was expecting a much more negative performance. But particularly like Laiduni was fantastic. And they showed that they had the pace as well in transition. And they got a very credible draw against Denmark. And to be honest, that game could have gone either way. I think Tunisia had a couple penalty shouts, came really close through Jabali. Schmeichel made one of the saves of the tournament, but equally Cornelius should have put away that tap in at the back post. But then it was this game against Australia. That first half was dire. They were so bad. They looked like they didn't know how to play football. And they were dreadful. And then Australia scored a brilliant goal. That header was fantastic. But then Tunisia just lost it. They couldn't press. They couldn't do anything in the first half. Second half, so much better, so much more improved, but they just couldn't score. And, that's their tournament gone for me. They have to beat France now. And, that is the most difficult game in world football right now is beating the champions France, who look like they're, back to their scintillating best. And so for me, Tunisia blew it. If they had gotten that win against Australia, they might not even need a win against France. When they could play for that draw. Now they have to try and win, and that'll play straight into France's hands. So it's frustrating. It really is, because they had it in their hands. They had a brilliant chance.
Zayn, I'm telling you, someone's going to send a post in and saying this guy's trying to be Simon Cowell. Someone's going to send a post in. I'm telling you, Zayn, because I'm just going to go to the Australia game, and I'm going to go to the first 45 minutes. You take years to get to the World Cup. Years to get to the World Cup. A lot of things need to be put into place. You get there, and then you put a performance in like that. You stink out the first half. I feel sorry for the supporters in their ground for that first half. I really do. I'm telling you, Zayn, they should be giving money back to those people. That's how bad the game was first off. It was terrible. How on earth can you it just made me once again just so sad. It was poor. If it was not for the excellent goal by the Australian, I can't remember his name, Alasdair. I don't know if you can. My apologies.
Mitchell Duke.
A lovely header. I would have switched off, because Tunisia gave me no hope.
I was going to, Courtney, well, for not knowing his name, you should give the audience their money back for listening to the podcast.
Well,
that's what we pay you for. Pay you all the years. That's why you have that big contract.
Yeah, Courtney on the big money here. It's shameful.
Listen, rightfully so. And you know why I forgot his name? Because I almost forgot that game. That's how boring Tunisia almost put me to bed. I'm telling you, you wait so long to get to the World Cup, and then you stink the place out in an important game. Go and kill yourself and get the win, man. Get the draw, get the points. How on earth? I don't know. You know what Tunisia needs, Zayn? I'll tell you what Tunisia needs. They need a Rassie Erasmus with them. That's what they need. They have
There's a lot of people out there who won't know who Rassie Erasmus is, the South African rugby coach, World Cup winner.
Director.
Yeah, go on. Director, sorry, you're right. Director of coaching.
They need a siege mentality. They need that. They need that siege mentality that we were speaking about earlier. They didn't have it, Zayn. They basically just waited like Anthony Joshua for the knockout punch against Usyk. It was just, oh man, Tunisia, please, man, come on.
All right, we've got rugby, we've got boxing, and we haven't even got to Ghana yet. So let's move us there. We know that there is a FIFA group that sit together. And former Nigerian international Sunday Olisha is part of FIFA's TSG. And he had a press conference earlier in the week, said that the Ronaldo penalty against Ghana was genius. To use his exact quote, this is what a Sunday said. He went, "The Ronaldo penalty, people can say what they want about him, but the smartness to wait for that second to touch the ball, continue his leg, and then get the contact, that is total genius. Let's give strikers the compliment for getting smarter. VAR is also a major reason why there are more penalties happening. Referees can look at it 3 or 4 times. This was obviously in reference to the penalty that Ronaldo got and eventually resulted in Portugal beating Ghana in their World Cup opener. We know that the Ghana coach, Otto Addo, was really unhappy with that penalty. He's very critical of the referee for giving it. Gentlemen, were Ghana hard done by, or is this Ghanaian team just not up to muster?
Alasdair, please let me come in and start here. Zayn, I'd like to ask you a question. Are the Ghanaians unhappy with a penalty decision?
It's not the first time.
Because I'll tell you, there was a country that they cheated with a penalty decision to get to where they currently are at this moment in time. Ghana won a penalty against South Africa, which was a disgrace of a penalty. A disgrace. That player that won that penalty, I hope he's carrying the bag for their loss against Portugal. I could not care. I could not care.
Well, yeah.
And you know, after the game, Zayn, I was watching the Ghanaians, how unhappy they were. And I was just sitting there thinking to myself, so when we weren't happy when your player dived, you didn't say anything. The manager didn't say anything as well. All of a sudden, he's clever. He now can pick out a player diving, yet he couldn't pick out his player diving to not allow South Africa to go to the World Cup. It's amazing how these people all of a sudden just become masters of futuristic decisions. I don't care what happened with them. I'm happy they will be going home. They cheated South Africa out of going to the World Cup because of a penalty decision. So I'm sorry. I have no sympathy for them.
Well, I guess the way you view penalties is the lens you have, and Courtney certainly has one of a one-eyed South African fan, although in many ways I feel the same about that penalty in the qualification process. But Alasdair, be the voice of reason and take emotion out of it. What do you think?
I think I agree with Courtney in terms of that the how Ghana even got here was shameful, because South Africa, and not to say South Africa are a good side, because I don't think they deserve to get through qualifying either, but they very much did not deserve to lose that game against Ghana. And that was shameful. But this one I thought was so poor. It was so frustrating. And I think, both can be true in that all they say is right. Ronaldo played it well. He did his job, drawing the tackle. But for me, that was never a pen, man. Never a pen. He got the ball. Like, there's hardly any contact. For me, that's never a pen. I was so frustrated. And now look, like, that doesn't take away for the fact that, I think Ghana were, bar a couple attacks, not very good. They were opened up far too easily. Again, similar to Cameroon, once the game got opened up, they couldn't they couldn't put a cap on it. They couldn't slow down the game. They couldn't defend anymore. And again, it's another sign of a team that hasn't had time to be coached. But, again, like I said earlier in the pod, Ghana, this, for me, what I want to see from them is, a team that is looking to build on itself, playing those young guys. I'll be honest, I'm sick and tired of seeing Jordan and Andre Ayew. And I'll be honest, I've got to say, Andre Ayew scoring is the worst thing for this Ghana type team. Because look, I love Andre Ayew. I think he's a legend for Ghana. I rate him a lot higher than a lot of Ghanaians. But his time is done. He offered nothing in that game. He didn't move. He didn't come to feet. At least Inaki Williams didn't have a great game, but he was moving. He was trying to stretch the Portuguese attack. And so from our defense, for me, Andre has to start on the bench, because for me, what he is he's a similar player to Ronaldo now. In the box, he's great. He's Ghana's best finisher. He's, their most clutch player. And so for me, that's someone who needs to come out in the 70th minute to change a game. But for me, it's time to move over and give some of these young guys a real shot at playing. We saw how good Bukhari was when he came on. Barnier was really good in the World Cup warm-ups. Kamaldeen Sulemana hasn't been, still trying to get fit. But for me, what I love in these next 2 games is, look, you've played the big team in Portugal. let's be honest, I don't think Ghana are going to get out of this group. But if they are, they have to be brave. They have to. And for me, that means not playing Jordan or Andre Ayew, or at least not starting them, playing your youngsters, playing the attacking football, you know, being more aggressive than they were, because they have a good defense. They have a good team. They have a young team, and they need to use that, like the likes of Canada and the US, who have shown that with a young team that isn't as talented or as experienced as some of these big teams, you can still go toe to toe to them because you have the energy. So for me, I want to see a bit more from them, because I don't think they've been great. But look, again, for me, Ghana coming to this tournament, the team I had the least expectations for. They're here to learn. They're here to grow. For them, 2026 is the World Cup, which they'll be looking to hit top form. So I'm, you know, hoping for a lot better, but I'm not expecting too much.
Zayn, I'd also just like to add to it something that we need to make a highlight here, and Alasdair touched on it a bit there, is the recruitment. Now, the work that's been done behind the scenes to get some of these players into that Ghanaian team is unbelievable. Like, I couldn't understand how they got Lamptey there. You know, that is such a good move to get Lamptey in Inaki Williams. You know, so you can see that the presence of please, then remind me the gentleman that we was on our podcast before. I'm so sad I can't remember him.
Are you talking about Chris Hughton?
Mr. Chris Hughton himself. He's going to be very upset with me because
Ghana's director of football.
Yes, Ghana's director of football, and his second friend in Grays, Essex. Yeah, his work is done behind the scenes. Because Lamptey, you know what, could have gone into the England national team at right back. That's how good he is. An unbelievable player. So to almost recruit him to get to the Ghanaian national team, because Lamptey is young enough. And with the injuries England had, Lamptey would have been at the World Cup for England. Not just because of injuries, because he's also good enough to play, Zayn, you know. So Chris Hughton deserves a huge amount of credit for what he's done for the Ghana national team. And I don't know if you can recall this, our very own Francis said he didn't go to Ghana. He actually went there on holiday and ended up with a job, you know. So
best kind of holiday. Best kind of holiday.
Yeah, well done to what he's done in the background in order to give the coach a prepared team for not now, for 2026. He's done exceptionally well.
Sure. Well, listen, we've run our rule on the tournament. We've had a fantastic look at all the African teams. We certainly hope all the best for the teams as they enter the final round of football. We'll obviously wrap up their performances. Tunisia, Ghana, Morocco, Cameroon, and Senegal. You'll get all your information and all the analysis and all the news from us. Courtney and Alasdair, pleasure having you on this podcast to chew the fat. And for those of you out there who are listening, and if you have thoughts, why don't you tweet us at OTW_podcast? You can find us on Instagram at the same handle. And of course, on YouTube and Facebook, just search for the On the Whistle podcast. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear who you think are the African teams that can make it to the knockouts at this stage. I think we're confident about Morocco. I have hopes that Senegal will make it through. In fact, I'm going to predict now that Senegal will make it too, and we'll have 2 in the knockout rounds. It's been a pleasure as always around Africa's biggest braai. I wish you gentlemen well. Have a good week.